I want to go back to a road that we're very close to right now in Delhi, Sri Aurobindo Marg, right? And I have often frequented the famous club called Oro, right, which is derived from that. But
See, this is it's immediately apparent, Vinamra, that how much younger you are than me, because I immediately thought of the Aurobindo ashram
yeah,
and you thought of the Oro club. This just, I mean, the perspective is immediately clear.
no, the only reason
So,
I mentioned Oro is because I thought it was always funny that they figured that they could just name it on the road, right?
yeah,
But I just know the name. I have a vague inkling. I understand
yeah,
who this man was, but I have honestly, I completely confess to knowing little about him
yeah.
and what was his role in India's freedom struggle, the freedom we now take for granted.
No, Aurobindo is an incredible case. I'm so glad we're discussing him, Vinamra, because it adds up to everything that we've been talking about till now. Aurobindo was taught from the childhood to completely detach himself from his, parental culture. He was taught to be a Englishman's Englishman, so to speak. Aurobindo was taught Latin. Aurobindo was taught, European languages. Aurobindo was taught horse riding and this, that, all kinds of things, right? Now, he may not have been good at many of these things, but he was truly trained to develop what I would call a Western mind.
Hmm.
He was sent away very early to England to study and become a classic English gentleman, extremely refined, who understood Western classical music and the Western languages and understood Greek and Latin and so on and so forth, was extremely well versed in the culture and the literature of the West. That was the upbringing Aurobindo was trained to be. He was trained to be the Englishman's Englishman.
Mhm.
And yet, Aurobindo would say, maybe as the divine would have it, Aurobindo gave up all of that, came back to India, and became a revolutionary. Aurobindo was almost hung, you know, for his revolutionary activities.
Which were?
He's well, it was conniving against the empire, violent acts, plotting murder, bombing, all kinds of things.
He did
Right?
all of that. I
He was
see.
part of the revolutionary group.
I see Aurobindo as a spiritual figure mostly.
Yes. And yet, what happened? So he spent time in prison. He said that when he spent time in prison, he saw Vivekananda. He had visitations, as it were, from Swami Vivekananda. And he then began to feel that was his path was different. So when he came out of prison, Aurobindo gave up revolutionary life for a higher cause. And he said that the higher cause was for humanity to discover, this higher spiritual purpose.
Mhm.
He moved to Pondicherry, and then, of course, he met the person we know as the mother now, who
Mhm.
became his, closest disciple, confidant, all kinds of things. And she then helped Aurobindo build this entire community called the Auroville community. And a lot of that is the mother's work, right? Aurobindo actually also, remember, in Pondicherry, for large periods of time, he would, sink back in silence.
Mm.
He would not talk to anybody for long periods of time. Actually, if you are ever interested, Vinamra, Aurobindo wrote some of the most lucid, but very difficult to read, and it's very dense, but some of the most detailed explanations of how a normal human mind rises slowly to comprehend this, the extra natural, so to speak, or the supernatural, which is, by which I don't mean ghosts and whatever. I mean the sense that the in an Upanishadic sense, understanding the divine,
Mhm.
right? When that happens to a person, how their mind and their consciousness opens up and what they feel and what they experience. I think some of the most detailed notes were
Mm.
written by Aurobindo, and most people cannot get into this because they are really they're very dense, and they are very detailed and complex, because complex things are happening to him.
Right.
But Aurobindo is one of the greatest examples of how our sense of nationalism is irretrievably intertwined with spirituality.
Hmm.
Swami Vivekananda said the same thing. There can be no nation without this spiritual heritage.